Hello, students. Well, welcome to this lesson on artificial intelligence, everyone's favorite topic. This one is also a difficult topic to cover in this class. I think we'll all have different ways we use it, different comfort levels with it, but it is rapidly has entered our schools and essentially everything in our lives. We know that students are using AI to write essays, generate images, summarize readings, help with homework. We know teachers are using it to create lesson plans, quizzes, rubrics, which is one of my favorite things to use it for. And because AI tools are information systems, that means we as school librarians are uniquely positioned to lead conversations about AI literacy. So just like we teach students how to evaluate websites or cite sources, we now need to teach them how to use AI responsibly and really think critically about the information they're being fed from AI. So what do we mean when saying AI? There's so much out there on AI and different ways that we are saying AI and what it actually means. So, artificial intelligence, so the broad AI, refers to computer systems that perform tasks that normally require some sort of human intelligence. So, examples are chatbots, image generators, voice assistants, things like that. And of course, example tools. I mean, we all have heard about ChatGPT, Grammarly, things around that type. AI is not a single technology. It's such a huge, broad category that includes things like machine learning, large language models, image generation systems, recommended algorithms. And really, we encounter AI every day. If you do a search in Google, it tries to pop up. I know there are settings that you can put in place. Anytime there's an update, you have to reset those settings, it seems like. Uh, if you use directions, depending on which one you're using, it could be using AI. Predictive text, often AI. If you use Grammarly, if you watch TikTok videos, things like that. Okay, so I mentioned large language models. What does that mean? What are those? So large language models, this is what is being used for things like ChatGPT. So large language models are trained on massive amounts of text data. It also means that they are great at learning patterns since they are trained on this huge amount of data. I mean, I can't even fathom the amount of data, but they learn patterns in language. That's important. So, large language models, they're learning patterns in language and predict the most likely next word in a sentence. So, the idea here is that they do not know things the way that we do. They generate responses based on statistical probability. And this is so important to understand. And I strongly encourage you to deep dive, if you love ChatGPT, to deep dive into actually what it is doing. It's not telling you key pieces of knowledge, it's predicting responses on the most likely next word. So it's trippy. So when you ask AI system a question, it doesn't search through a database and retrieve facts the way when you use a library database. Again, it's predicting most likely sequence of words. So how is it being used? For everything. It's being used for everything. Um, and it's really important to also explain this to students sometimes or teachers, and it depends on the grade level, right? So it's used for everything, but it's generating text that sounds correct. but it may not always be accurate. And that's why AI sometimes produces these hallucinations. So one of the things that I just mentioned that AI education should be developmentally appropriate. So depending on your level that you're working with, for example, like when you're teaching databases, you would teach database searching to kindergartners very differently than you would high schoolers. So AI literacy is the same thing. It's got to be scaffolded to fit your grade levels. So that's something to keep in mind. So again, how is it being used for everything? Students are using it to summarize information. They're using it to generate drafts, brainstorm ideas, which is one of the things that I've encouraged you all to try out. Use it to brainstorm ideas if you don't have any, because sometimes just starting is the hardest part. It's also really good at explaining difficult concepts. It's okay at checking grammar, depending on which one you're using. Also, okay at creating lesson plan quizzes, rubrics, again, depending on which one you're using. But since it is generating text that is predictive, it's not always going out and finding that information. Occasionally it is. Sometimes you have to tell it to do that. So, what is your role in all of this? Since librarians help students navigate new information and new information technologies that could have been, oh gosh, card catalogs. I'm dating myself back in the day to currently our databases, search engines, Google Scholar. AI is simply kind of the next evolution here. So we're well positioned to guide its responsible use, but that does mean explaining how it works, discussing some major ethical issues with AI, such as, gosh, when students submit AI generated work as their own. So when you're talking about academic integrity, when you're teaching about bias in these AI systems, because it's based on what data they're being trained on. So if there is bias in that data, it will regurgitate bias. And it's the same with misinformation. So if it's fed inaccurate information enough, then it will regurgitate inaccurate information. Also, some tools will collect user data. So that's really important for you all. If there is a specific tool that you like, or that you're teaching students and teachers about it, to investigate that tool and see how your data is being used. Are you continually feeding the beast? Are you putting your private information out there in order for it to be used in some sort of way? So these are things really to think about. And again, it's so important. I know I've said it several times. AI systems reflect the data they're trained on. So if it is being fed inaccurate or biased or some sort of information that is not ideal, that is often what it will reproduce. So this is why critical evaluation of any information is essential, and it's a key skill that we can be teaching to our teachers and our students. So continuing with ethical and other concerns, we've talked a little bit about academic integrity, bias, misinformation, privacy. One thing I want to mention here also is the environmental concerns. We've been seeing students here on campus that are asking to not use AI. So if you have an assignment, or if you're collaborating with a teacher who wants to use AI as an assignment, it would not be a bad idea to think about, okay, is there still ways that students can complete this assignment without using AI? Or are you going to force them to use AI even if they have concerns with maybe privacy or environmental concerns? So something to think about. So when we've been using AI in some of our assignments here on campus, I've been giving them an option to not use it. So just something, again, to think about. Um, the reason why there are environmental concerns is that when you train these large AI models, it requires an enormous amount of resources to go into it in order for it to have this computing power to integrate this information. Environmental impacts could be so using huge amounts of energy that is sometimes electricity, sometimes it's water. So often fresh water is used to cool the servers. And really, it's when they build these large data centers, they're using a huge amount of just land and the resources that are around it. Sometimes that really impacts the power grid of those communities nearby. All right. So just something to think about. Also, what's important if you're using AI, know if your school has a policy about AI use. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they may want you to help with building an AI policy for the school. So when you're doing that, just think about, are you all going to allow the use of AI? And if so, I would encourage you all to put in there about the transparent use of AI. And that includes, when is it acceptable for students to use it? You might even have the discussion about, if a teacher uses it, should they disclose that information to the students? And then, when does AI use count as cheating or plagiarism? Because that's another ethical type issue. And then, if you do count it as cheating in some way, specifically, how is it used that it counts as cheating? And what are the repercussions of that? So I know I'm not sure exactly how much information about AI you all may need, because again, everybody seems to be at a different place with AI. Also, it's complicated because AI tools are constantly and quickly changing. So some of the issues that we've seen with ChatGPT in the past, they're modifying things. Sometimes it does do more searching now versus regurgitating information that it's trained on, or sometimes it's being trained differently or with more information. So it's changing quickly, which means you have to kind of keep up with all of this on top of everything else that we all do as librarians. So my key ways that I can mention to try to stay informed about the changes with AI is following professional organizations. So locally, we have MASL in Missouri. MASL also has regional associations with them. So you might go out and see who is your regional MASL area. AASL, great to follow as an organization. I would also say read professional publications. So, School Library Journal, for example, others that you find. If you find bloggers that you really like to read their blogs, follow them. Also, webinars, trainings, conferences. Morenet, they have conferences, they do trainings. I would see what they have to offer. MASL, same thing. Webinars, trainings, conferences, listservs, and same with MLA as well. So stay informed is going to be your key thing with AI and anything with technology, honestly. I would also suggest experimenting with these tools. Share your experiences. Talk to other librarians. We had a group of academic librarians and public librarians who got together last summer, and we talked about AI, and we talked about what does it mean? How does it work? What are the downsides? How do we teach it? And so we all got together and started creating a resource for that. I think that would be great to do that with school librarians, but the first step is talking about it. So talk about it with other school librarians. Um, yeah, so just keep in mind, we have a huge important role to play in this. And so the first step is finding out what it's like to use these tools. So I highly suggest you all explore, find out, even in the discussion boards, how you're using it, which ones you prefer, what do you like, what do you don't like, because several of us, if you've not used it, it feels intimidating at first because it sounds highly technical. It sounds almost dangerous, so really the first step is exploring it. ChatGPT, one of the most common ones. I mean, it's a good general AI tool, but I wouldn't stop with ChatGPT. There's so many better options out there now. Claude, for example, is great at summarizing huge amounts of information. I like how Claude writes. I know now I've made it sound like it's a real person, but I think when they do the drafting, I think they draft more professionally sounding items or materials. So if you do have to write a memo, or I know we've already done a budget proposal, that's one of those things you might put that back through Claude and say, hey, make sure this sounds very professional. Magic School AI, I've heard a lot about this one. The last class, I think almost everyone used Magic School AI. So check it out. It's actually designed for educators. Their privacy statement is pretty solid. So if you want a good example to see how they're using your data, go to Magic School AI and look for that information and then compare it with others. It's great for lesson plans, reading comprehension questions. It's just way more educator focused than some of these others. Microsoft Copilot, you all have access to Copilot as Missouri State students. It seems to be kind of the trend that colleges and universities use Copilot because it's built in with all the Microsoft stuff. It's interesting. Some of it is good, some of it's bad, I think, because in some ways it will integrate all the other Microsoft products into it, which is just kind of weird to me. Canva does use some AI features, so image generation. Canva, if you don't use it, you probably do. It's great for marketing. It's great for even having students create projects. It's it's just kind of a nice way to make things look creative. And yeah, so I would say try it if you haven't yet. And then Grammarly for writing and grammar feedback. They have some of it's free and then there's paid versions. But definitely these are some that I would recommend, but there's so many more and I would recommend even some more than these, but it gets overwhelming. So I stuck with one slide full. Um, just keep in mind, you don't have to understand everything about AI to teach responsible AI use, right? You don't have to understand 100% how it works, but you can teach responsible AI use, whether or not you understand it. And that's going to be the important thing for students. Just sometimes students like to know, well, how does this work? Especially when you talk to them about predictive text. Again, highly encourage you to deep dive into AI and some of these tools. All right, so if there's any questions, let me know. I hope you all discuss how you use it, how you maybe concerns about it in the discussion board. All right, until next time.